Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. It's Josie, founder of Women Who Lead with Heart and the Create More Confidence workshop, coming on live for my Sunday night live. I should call it my Sunday sometimes live. Don't come on live every Sunday, but there you go. You got to catch me while we're here. For the next 3 weeks, I'm doing a series on what you get out of a coach and how does coaching work. I'm going to teach 3 key tactics that I use with my clients that you might be able to implement to start feeling a shift, some positive movement towards the direction that you want in your life. So, who's here? If you're joining me live, give me a hello, say hi. If you're joining live on replay, give me a hashtag replay. I love to see the comments. I love to know who's joining. And we'll just dive right in. Lesson number 1 is all about clarity. Clarity is the first goal for any coaching session. In fact, it's the reason why so many coaching sessions that are discovery calls at the very start, they're called a clarity call because the whole point is for you and your coach to get clear. Clear on what you want, clear on what results you hope to have, clear on the direction that you're going, clear on whether or not the coach is the right fit for you, clear on the direction, clear on the outcomes that you seek, clear on how it works. Clarity is everything. So today's call is all about just that. Why do we want clarity? What does clarity mean? It's kind of a coachy insider term. And what is the way in which a coach might help you get this sought clarity, even if you're coming through the airwaves just on a one-way, broadcast such as this. So clarity can be a concept, but it also can be something specific. Let's just dive in. Clarity can be something like vision, being able to see clearly. If you wear lenses like I do and you go to an optometrist, you probably had that experience where you sit and you look through lenses and they slip different versions of different powered lenses in front of your eyes until all of a sudden it gets clearer and clearer and clearer, and then boom! Wow, that's perfect. I can see. And the experience of that is really a lovely metaphor for what we're talking about when we talk about coaching clarity. We think that we can see pretty good until we see the doctor that gives us different options and has us try different things until we realize how much crisper and clearer and obvious the detail things actually have. Like when you can see with real clarity, you realize that you've been looking through a veil before. That's a beautiful metaphor for what coaching can do as well. When we look for clarity, we want to understand more deeply our reasons or what's holding us back or where we might be missing possibility in our lives. If we don't have clarity, it will be foggy and fuzzy and not obvious to us. So clarity can also inspire that possibility or just inspiration when suddenly, if you're able to see something clearly, whether it's through your eyes or just metaphorically, when you realize something and you get it with a sense of grasp, a sense of understanding, a sense of aha, when you have that clear moment, it can inspire you. It can open up possibility, which is another reason why we seek clarity, is for inspiration, so that we widen our scope of what's possible for us. What do we do when we don't have clarity? There's a bunch of things that we do. A lot of people don't even notice that they're not clear. And they're living in sort of an unconscious paradigm, just getting through, hoping for something better, wishing for change. But for those of you who really do seek clarity and feel some sense of distressing emotion when it's not present, when you're really hampered by not feeling clear, I'm going to give you some tips. First of all, we just need to trust that it will come. Sometimes getting clear is a process. And sometimes it's not so obvious to us what's on the other side of that process. So there's a lot of trust in ourselves, in the evolving, in the growing awareness, so that we know that it will work out. We just have to stick with it. Sometimes when we're not clear, we need to go get a tool. If we're using the eye exam metaphor, we are seeking the expertise of somebody who can use a tool to help us see something that we can't. Or we can seek a guide, somebody who has experience and vision and wisdom that can guide us towards that desired land where things are clear. That's what we can do when we don't have clarity. Trust that it will come if we stay with the process, get some tools to help us along the way, and hire a guide that can help us, show us the way, who's been there before, who has expertise, who we trust. Okay, so this is what coaching is about. I'm telling you a little bit on why coaching works, but I want to give you some self-guided coaching tips for how you can guide yourself. Coaching helps you see blind spots. It helps you be aware of things that you're not necessarily considering, because you have a default thinking brain that tends to find the bias that proves old beliefs. Coaching can help bring into focus things that you are not necessarily looking for or seeing, helping you see your own blind spots. Coaching also helps you become aware of your own limiting beliefs. Sometimes you will say something and report it as the truth, like it's just the news. And a really good coach will call out, is that true, or is that just your perception or assumption of what's true? Sometimes we have these beliefs that we think are truths that are not necessarily true and don't need to stay true. That's another thing coaching can do, is really challenge us to question things that we take for granted that might not be serving us. Coaching also helps us look at the fears that are driving the show. Sometimes when we're in unconscious model, where our fears are what's really driving our behavior and keeping the status quo in place because we're afraid of something that we're not looking at, that we're not evaluating. A coach might challenge you to actually address what you're afraid of, what's underneath the behavior that's keeping you stuck and safe, so that you can shake things up and have a transformation. Coaching also helps you recognize perspectives that are not serving you. This is sort of like the limiting beliefs, but seeing how sometimes we make assumptions about the way things work that are not necessarily true and that may not be serving you or helping you. Coaching also helps you challenge assumptions that may not be valid. So many times a client will say to me, well, I could try that, but I know what's going to happen. And I always think, how do you know what's going to happen? Sometimes we think we're sure of the way other people will behave, or we think we know what the outcome will be if we risk or dare. We think that we already can predict that, and that keeps us stuck in the same mindset and in the same behaviors. But coaching can really help you challenge that old thinking and those assumptions that may not be valid. And coaching can help you reevaluate all the choices that have gotten you here. There might have been a darn good reason for why you studied what you did in college, why you are in the relationships that you're in, why you chose your profession, but they may not be serving you now. And it's a wonderful opportunity in coaching to be able to look under the rocks and understand, do those choices still serve you? Doesn't matter why you chose them in the past, do they still serve you now? And above all, when we're talking about clarity, when we're talking about seeing something, having vision, opening up to possibility, it's about focus. That which we focus on expands. There's so much truth in this. There's so many studies about this, that when we actually put our focus and attention on a desired outcome or result, there is a bias where it naturally begins to become true, because energy flows where attention goes. So when we're able to actually take time and space, often through coaching, whether it's self-coaching or with the assistance of a hired coach, we are focusing on our own vision and what's possible for us. And just doing that can yield exceptional results because we're thinking and focusing and putting our attention on something desired, which is so much more powerful than just running on autopilot. So how we doing, ladies? Who here feels like this is a hell yes? Can you resonate with this? Does this make sense to you? Now I'm going to give you some tools that you can use on your own, even if you don't have a coach. Some tools that coaches use to help their clients get this clarity. You ready? All right. So the first one is really looking at our thoughts. Really deconstructing our thoughts, examining the stories that we're telling ourselves and the assumptions that we're making, and asking ourselves, is that really true? Is it true all the time? Am I sure that it's true? Does it help me to believe that this is still true? So if you're working on your own with feeling stuck or wanting a change in your life, one of the first things you can do is write down the first assumption you have. I want a different job. I want a different job. I want a different industry, a different boss. I want to do something different. I want to live my life on purpose. But I'm afraid I'll lose money, or I won't live up to my degree, or I don't know if I can get that job, or I don't know what I don't know. You want to write down the thoughts that you have that you feel are holding you back, and really address them. How true are they, and do you want to keep believing them? So that's number one, is deconstructing our thoughts, really looking at that. Related to that, number two is shifting our perspective. What if you couldn't fail? That's a wonderful perspective shifting question. What if you tried it and it worked? Is another wonderful perspective shifting question. What would your inner leader, your future wise self, have you do? Is another perspective shifting question. It's not like I have a list of these, but this is the type of space that a coach would hold for you and that you can do for yourself by asking yourself, is this perspective the most helpful for me? This is where I want to introduce what I'm teaching my friend and client Kendra. We're talking about so what coaching, which is a little bit triggering. It's a little bit provoking, but follow me here, where your client might say something like, well, I'm really worried what they're going to think of me. And the coach would use so what coaching to say, so what? What's the worst that could happen? What if you try that and it's not terrible? What if the people do judge you? What if you do fail? Will it kill you? So having this person or your own thoughts be able to challenge your perspective and ask, so what? What if that isn't the right way? What if there's a different way to think of it? What if I expand my possibilities? That can be a wonderful way that you can self-coach yourself to find a different perspective. All right, next up, number three, combusting fear. Very close to deconstructing your thoughts and shifting your perspective is looking at what are you really, really, really afraid of. Often the things that are holding us back are that they are has a root of fear that is tugging at us, that is pulling us down. So look at that and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? I'm really afraid of looking like an idiot. I'm really afraid of failing. I'm really afraid of humiliating myself. I'm really afraid of looking stupid. I'm really afraid of making the wrong decision. Whatever it is. If you can address the thing that's really making you fearful, you can then start to deconstruct the thoughts around it or find a different perspective to see if there's some way that you can shift or loosen its grip on you. It's not so easy, but it's worth it. Here's another tactic that you can try. Number four, embodiment. Embodiment is a tactic that many coaches use that asks you to feel, to lean into the feeling, the physicality of your experience. If you're feeling something sort of confused and mashed up, something like excitement and fear together, or anticipation and worry blended, or boredom and sadness, and it's hard to name it, then A wonderful tactic that you can use that's a coaching style is embodiment, where you go inside and you feel into it. Where am I feeling this? And what does it feel like? You might be able to name it like a tickle in your heart space that feels both exciting and anxiety producing. You might be able to give it a quality, a color, a scent, a warmth, a temperature, a speed, a frequency. You might actually really be able to lean into playing with an emotion as if it's got its own physical structure that you're holding inside of you. A pit in your stomach, a quickening in your heart, a tightness in your throat, stiffness or soreness in your shoulders. What is it telling you? Can you lean into that as a way to get clarity on what's really happening? What is that part of your body telling you? That's embodiment. Number 5. Finding more empowered thoughts. A wonderful coaching example that we used in CTI, Coaches Training Institute, when I was getting certified, is finding your captain and crew. The idea that you're sailing a ship and that inside of you directing this boat through your life, you have a captain and crewmates that are sort of like your board of directors or your inner wisdom, people, that your guides, your spirit guides, whatever works for you. And you think about what are the qualities of each of the people, each of the narrators of your story that you want to have. Who is your captain? Who is your inner icon that has helped steering the ship? Can you empower yourself with those thoughts? What would my captain have me do? What do my crewmates want for me? There are parts of me that show up when I'm feeling empowered. What parts of those are there? This is in opposition to the saboteur, where if you joined my Create More Confidence 5-day workshop, you know a little bit about the saboteur and how it sits on our shoulder and tells us negative things to keep us safe and small. And it's our inner critic, and it leads to imposter syndrome, and it's not helpful. So being able to understand the different forces that we have within our captain and crew versus our saboteur, choosing empowering thoughts rather than a disempowering inner critic, is another tactic. And then lastly, I would say number 6, I think we're on number 6, is processing. Processing is another coaching tactic that can be used where a coach holds you in a space of whatever powerful emotion you're feeling. This is especially useful when you're feeling really strong emotion. When you're feeling grief or fear or tension or panic or something that just feels overpowering. The idea of processing an emotion is to be with it deeply and feel into that emotion, almost exaggerating the emotion as if you're pushing your cork down below the surface to really submerge yourself. This sounds a little scary. It's really well done with another person, because the idea that you'll get lost there is just not true. It's that your body will metabolize the negative experience, and naturally your cork pops back up to the surface once you realize you're done feeling that feeling, and that you will be okay to let it shift, that you don't need to hold on to it in the same exact way that it is. The way in which you do this is a lot like embodiment. You actually get really internal and feel the feelings. Put your hand on the space where they're most present. You can breathe to that space. You can let that space talk to you until you feel some shift, some lightening, some movement, sometimes crying, sometimes a sigh. And then you know that things have moved. Okay, all of these 6 tactical tips that I've given you, these 6 modes of coaching that you can use with yourself or with a coach, can lead to an epiphany. Coaching is really all about evoking transformation, holding space for a client so that transformation can emerge on its own. The coach doesn't have an agenda that they're superseding on top of the client. They're not voting for the client to do one thing or the other. They're not trying to steer the client in a certain way that they believe is right. They're holding space for that client to find their own right, best way. We're not feeding words to the client. We're allowing the client to come to their own realization. We're allowing for transformation to be evoked. It's evocative. It's spacious. And that can lead, this is the last piece, to an epiphany, which is a sudden realization or an internal knowing. Just like a snap, just like an awakening, just like a sudden knowing, a sudden realization, a sudden aha moment, a sudden clarity that comes to us often when we're not trying to think about it, not trying to figure it out, not trying to pro and con it, not trying to put everything in a list, not trying to evaluate the pros and the cons, the ups and the downs, not trying to figure it out. That's the danger of sometimes working things out in our own brain without using a coach modality, is that we go down this logical lane that may not lead us very far towards a real knowing. The epiphany comes almost in the shower when you're washing your hair, or when you're walking, not thinking about it, when you're in some rhythmic circumstance of allowing your brain space to find its own answer, and then boom, it comes to you. It's a beautiful thing. You've had it happen in your life, no doubt. It's not when you're trying to figure it out, it's when you're just allowing and it happens. This is the goal of clarity. It's the reason why we do the work, is because once we have that epiphany, once we have that realization, once we have the knowledge, then the next phases become so much easier. Are you inspired? Do you want to learn more? Do you want to practice it with this live with me? In a couple of weeks' time, I'm doing another Create More Confidence free 5-day workshop. If you haven't joined, or if you have, get back in again. There are all new lessons about finding your inner icon leader, about dealing with your saboteur, about eroding your imposter syndrome, about feeling the power of speaking up, how to speak powerfully, how to use public speaking tactics and feel confident, and how to be more decisive in your life. You want this stuff, girls? All you got to go to is to www.joeleader.com right now. My website is a landing page that gives you the sign up information. We start November 29th. joeleader.com, sign up for my free workshop, Create More Confidence, invite your friends so that you can practice some of these tools to actually move yourself forward. It's one thing to listen to them. It's another thing to actually be guided through a process, through some exercises to help you find that clarity. Sound good? All right, this was part 1 of coaching tactical tips for you, all about clarity. Stay tuned for next week when we talk about actions and how to make decisions. That's the second part of why we coach. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.